Here's a situation that comes up constantly in double system audio workflows. You're running a backup recorder, belt packs with onboard recording, whatever it is. The backup runs continuously or in long takes. Your primary recorder is cutting takes, scene 42 take 1, scene 42 take 2, and so on. At the end of the day, you've got 80 neatly trimmed primary files and a backup with files that are 20, 30, 40 minutes long each. Before any of those backups are useful to anyone in post, they need to be trimmed, so they cover the same timecode range as the corresponding primary file. Doing that by hand in a DAW for 80 files is a long afternoon. Wave Copilot does it in batch. Conform here means trimming, using timecode as the reference point. Every professional Wave file has a timecode stamp embedded in its BX metadata. It records the exact timecode at which that file started recording. Wave Copilot reads that value from each file and uses it to calculate where to cut. There are 3 modes. File to file. You give Wave Copilot a folder of primary files and a folder of backup files. For each primary file, it finds the backup audio that covers the same timecode range and trims the backup to match. Same in point, same out point, correct to the sample. The output is a set of backup files that align exactly with your primary files. Custom TC range. You specify a timecode in point and a timecode out point manually. Wave Copilot trims all selected backup files to that range. Useful when you need to extract a specific section, a scene, an act, an interview, from a long continuous recording. Replace track. You have a primary polywave where one channel is bad, noisy wireless, a dropout, a rubbing lav, and the backup recorder captured that same source cleanly. Instead of trimming a new file, Wave Copilot replaces the bad channel inside the primary polywave with the clean audio from the backup, aligned by timecode. Every other channel stays untouched. Let me show you the file-to-file mode first. I have my primary folder here. 8 Wave files from a shooting day, all with proper timecode embedded in the metadata. My backup folder contains long continuous recordings from a second belt pack. I open Wave Copilot, load my primary folder, then go to the Conform tab in the Split Combine section and load the backup folder. Wave Copilot reads the timecode from every file in both folders and maps them together. You can see the matching results between the 2 sets of files. Some files show warnings because they only partially overlap with the primary recordings. They either started later or stopped earlier. Next, I choose the output format, set an output folder, and click Trim and Export. Wave Copilot processes all 8 primary files, finds the corresponding TC range in the backup recordings, and writes 8 trimmed backup files, 1 per primary file, same timecode boundaries. The output file names match the primary file names, so they are easy to identify. The backup recordings are now ready to hand off alongside the primaries. Here in my DAW, the primary files are in blue and the backup files are in orange. I import the trimmed files and place them using timecode. As you can see, they've been properly trimmed and are perfectly in sync. Custom TC range works differently. Here you're not matching to primary files, you're extracting a specific window of time from your backups. I'm back in the Conform tab. I switch to custom range mode. I type in an in point, 15 hours, 59 minutes. Out point, 16 hour. That's the afternoon interview block. I need everything recorded during that window extracted from the backup recordings. I select my backup files. I choose an output format and choose an output directory. I click Trim and Export. Wave Copilot goes through each file, checks whether it overlaps with that TC range, trims it to the range, and writes the output. Files that don't overlap at all are skipped. Files that partially overlap are trimmed to the overlap region. I get exactly the audio I need from that time window, nothing more. Here in my DAW, I import the trimmed file and place it using timecode. As you can see, the file has been properly trimmed and is perfectly in sync. There's a third mode that handles a different situation entirely, track replace mode. In track replace mode, you're not creating a new trimmed file. You're replacing a specific channel inside the existing primary polywave with audio from the backup. I load my primary polywave. I switch to Replace Track in the Conform tab of the Split Combine section. I load the backup file and tell it which channel in the backup has the clean version of that same source. I tell Wave Copilot which channel is the problem. Channel 1, the wireless lav, and select the clean backup file to replace with. This is non-destructive. The original primary file isn't modified. The output goes to the folder you specify. Then click on Replace Tracks and export. Wave Copilot reads the timecode from both files, aligns them, extracts the correct region from the backup, and writes it into channel 1 of the output file. All other channels come straight from the primary, untouched. The result is a polywave that's identical to the original, except the bad channel has been replaced. Quick note on something all three modes share: a Normalize to -1 dBFS checkbox. When you enable it, Wave Copilot runs an analysis pass on each backup channel before extraction and calculates the gain adjustment needed to bring the peak level to -1 dBFS. That adjustment is applied during the output write. The main use case is 32-bit float recordings. Float recorders capture at very conservative levels because float encoding has no clipping. But when that audio lands in a DAW or gets handed to an editor, it can look almost silent in the waveform. The Normalize option fixes that on the way out of the Conform step, so the output files are already at a usable level. It works on any format, 16-bit, 24-bit, float, but it's most valuable for float backups. If backup recordings are part of your workflow and trimming them is eating your time, or you're dealing with a bad channel and don't want to pull everything into a DAW just to fix one track, this is the feature to try. Free 14-day trial at the link in the description. See you next time.